Can we talk about the grace period
for operators?
Yeah,
sure.
Obviously we don't want a lion to come into the game again. However, I feel like the sort of hype that brings a new season and seeing how pro players use the new operators is kind of dead compared to what it used to be. I mean, before the grace period came out and, a new operator came out, you saw them use in Pro League. And it was really cool to see like how fast they had like sort of worked out how to play the new content. I thought that was really enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And it's not really there, I feel, even though they don't even use the new operators until the grace period is over. Like they don't scrim with Yana and Oryx right now. They're going to scrim with them before they come out. So the grace period just feels kind of pointless because the only place the pro players actually use these operators are in ranked, and ranked and competitive are two different games. Just because you can like clap someone in ranked by playing Yana and Oryx does not mean that they will be that strong in the pro league play. So I just feel like the grace period just kind of comes off as pointless.
What was the motivation behind it, Lion?
It was because pros wanted time to get used to new operators.
But they don't use it,
right?
They don't use it.
Exactly. So the excuse is that we want time so we can get used to the new operators and implement them because it's too much to ask to just have them in right away. Yeah. And I understand that that's a fair thing to ask if you then actually do practice with them and use them in the grace period.
They don't touch them in scrims for that grace period that it's supposed to do. So it's just pointless.
And you could almost, I know this is crazy, but you could make the argument that maybe ranked is actually paving the early meta for the new operators instead of Pro League. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that the pros, once they start getting their hands on them, they look at different ways of using them. Absolutely. But who's going to define how to use the new operators when they're released? The ranked players. You know what I mean? That's what everybody's going to see. And wouldn't you rather have the pros defining how these operators could be used? That's one argument I would say. Here's what I'll say. I would say one of two things. Either the developers need to get rid of the grace period, or number two, they need to take more risk because the grace period's there. Right now, what we have is operators coming into the game in a pretty tame state.
They're conforming to the meta, not really changing it that much.
Well, yeah, I mean, the pros play these operators in the pro workshops. They give their feedback. The operators come into the game in a state that the pros are happy with, and then they have the 30-day grace period, and then they don't get played by the pros once the 30-day grace period is over. Kali wasn't played a single time yesterday, to my knowledge. Walmart was played a couple times.
Walmart saw a decent amount.
Walmart was played a little bit
in APAC quite a bit. They played
Kali was there. Okay.
Walmart was played a fair bit in the EU as well. The problem is like, so they're either tame or they're OP. I've never heard anyone say that something got released that was perfectly fine and balanced. Like, I can't think of it at least which operator that would be. But with Kali, I remember watching the launch video at the event with a handful of pros, and a certain pro looked over and said, "This is literally the stupidest, most broken shit I have ever seen. She will break Pro League."
And they're not playing her.
And that exact team hasn't touched her.
See, and come on. This is why the grace period sucks. Because if this was the case, that voice crack. If this was the case, we would have seen them. They would have played this, and we would have seen this sort of like trying to like this is in my mind how we're going to play her, where she's completely broken, and truly get to see how that would play out instead of this whole like screaming with them and they're like, oh, they're not bad, we're not going to play it.
In a way, what I find quite interesting about removing the grace period is basically the best teams the cream will rise to the top. So those that are able to quickly adapt will shine through. And also, is it true to say that, for the most part, when these operators are revealed, it isn't a surprise for the pro players? Because I'm sure not all of them get to go to the workshops, but I'm sure it is communicated between them, or there's some groups where they discuss these operators. And
no, Pete, I'm sure every single one of these pros takes their NDA very seriously. Come on. What do you?
Well, I would have thought that the case would have been that they would all know what they were, but then with Zyronic's anecdote a moment ago about someone turning to him and saying that is the craziest. Makes you think.
I would say that supports your argument because he's not thinking for himself. That pro was listening to all of his buddies who played it early and got some type of 4K playing against the devs in Montreal. You know what I mean?
This guy actually played.
Okay,
and he knew what was up. He just only voiced his opinion after this part, right?
So,
I mean, I said the same. I had a discussion when the Shifting Tides TS was up. I remember, I'm not going to name him, but there was a pro player that was very vocal about Kali on Twitter. Thought it was the most broken operator he had in a long time. Same there. And I told him, just because you're clapping random people on the test server with Kali does not mean that in Pro League you will be able to do that.
You know, I wonder if we can look at the timeline. When did they bring this change in? About 2 years ago? When did this come in? 18 months, 2 years?
It was sometime after Outbreak. I think it was
Oh, yeah. It was after Parabellum, I want to say. It was the season after Parabellum.
But what I'm trying to get at is
we had grace periods before that as well. They just weren't the norm. I'm pretty sure when Capital came out, he was locked out for a little bit as well.
Was he?
Oh, no. Because Lion came in and had no grace period.
No. But wasn't Capital kept out for a little bit because of how bonkers he was with nades and his fire insta-killing people?
No, I don't think
I don't think we were allowed to play him on day one when he came out. Maybe we were.
Maybe that wasn't just made public. Maybe that was something internal that wasn't communicated.
Yeah, maybe.
But, it's funny because, this grace period comes in and it ties in exactly with the decline of G2. Hey, let's bring it back.
Funny.
No, I mean, I think you might be onto something there, Pete, in all honesty.
I don't get the what you said with the cream always rises to the top. That's got to hold true, and we have to always look at it that way. If you change a rule in any other sport, it's not like magically the 10 best people all of a sudden just aren't good anymore, right? Like in MMA when they removed headbutts. It wasn't like the
we all knew that day.
Good fighters, right? we all missed that day. This.
Yeah, adaptation is part of the skill set.
As much as people think.
Yeah, adaptation is part of the skill set, right? It's not just being really good at one thing. It's being able to change and understand how to fully utilize and what the impact is on your overall strategy.
And that thing they have to adapt to, they might be able to abuse that against the other teams, right? It's not only the team that has to, now we have to learn something new. Yes, but so does all the other teams.
And that process, watching that process of other teams catching up is actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remove the grace period. Hashtag.
Oh, man.
Is that the new hashtag?
Yeah. Hashtag remove grace period.